welcome back to part 2 of our 16 personality types. Okay, so in part 1 I asked you to go to the website and look up either from Human Metrics or 16personalities.com and look up the test, which should have been right there on the front page right there, and take that, I think it's like 30 or 50 questions test that makes up the Myers-Briggs-Jung test for personality type. Then you get 4 letters that at the end of the test in your score, and it tells you what 4 dichotomies you're strong in. We went over the differences in the 4 dichotomies in the previous video. If you didn't see that one, please watch that one first. Okay, so this video, what I want to do is I want to break something down, because in the third video we're going to go on to what God is doing. I think it's imperative that we see what science is doing and we actually look at it through the perception of the Bible. See, a lot of people try to think that science is opposite the Bible and God doesn't care about science, and that's just nonsense. So we're going to be going over that in part 3, which is the final part of this. But this part here is very significant because what we're going to look at today is the percentages of these types. Now, remember, there are 16 personality types that come out of the 4 dichotomies that you took in the exam. Now, out of those 16 personalities, there comes a percentage of the population. Okay, so here's where we get into a problem, because a lot of people think, well, who gets these percentages? Where do they come from? Who's just, who's taking these surveys? They're not about surveys. It's not about, what one person thinks about it. What they do is they take the percentages off these tests that they take. So on the one, I think right now you got 356 million people have taken the test. So out of that 356 million people, what they're saying is, this is the percentages that we've got out of these 356 million people that have taken it. So is it accurate? Well, it's about as accurate as you can get, considering the fact that you've got the people who are taking the test, getting the results, and they obviously somewhat mirror that result. Okay, so for those of you who disagree, it's okay. We'll just disagree. Okay? Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to break this down for you because the percentages are important, all right? So, first off, what I like to do is break up the groups. And how I do that is SFs and non-SFs. The reason is because one has more of a majority of the population when you're looking at demographics of these 16 types than the non-SFs. Okay, so what we're going to do is, listen, once again, if you like graphs and you like perfected graphs, I'm not the cat to be judging. You don't judge my graphs, they're terrible. But anyway, here's where we're at. So this is my quickie graph, okay? And yes, it's probably inaccurate and terrible as far as most people are concerned, but it's good enough for me, all right? So here's where we're at. So ESTJ, now there's an S in there, okay? ESTJs make up 13% of the populace, okay? So 13 out of 100. ESFJ, remember what I said, SF. Either it's S, SF, or F. Okay, those are the big 3 there. This is ESFJ, and that's 12% of the populace. ESFP is 11%. ISTJ is 8.5%. ISFJ is 7%. ENFP is 7%. ISTP 6%. ISFP 6%. ENTP 4.5%. ENTJ has no S or F in it, that's 4%. ENFJ has got 4%, that has an F in it. INTP has no S or F, right? It's 2.5%, 2.5 bodies out of 100. INFP has an F in it, so that's 2%. INTJ has no S or F in it, so that's 1.5. And then the smallest one is the INFJ, which is 1% of the population, 1 out of 100. Why does this matter? Well, here's what we're going to do. So, all of the demographics of the population that have an S, F, or both equal 87.5% of the world's population. Okay, now roughly there's 7 billion or plus people on the globe, so that's a huge population. But what we've done is we're looking at this on a scale of breaking it up into 16 different groups and personality types and the percentages of that. Okay, so basically what you have is you have 87.5% of the population that are making most of their decisionary making processes off of senses, feelings, or both. 87.5%. Now, what does that mean? Well, how do you move demographics to a specific understanding or, let's say, agenda? Okay, we're in agenda politics, we're in all this, all these people are out there fighting amongst one another. Well, how you do that is you appeal to their personality type. And that's the science behind it. That's what we do. When we go into advertisement and all these things, we try to figure out how do we get the biggest group of people or the largest demographic of the population in order to get them our way. So what you see is 87.5% can be persuaded by the S and the F. That's amazing. It's an incredible number. If you can just appeal to the SFs in some way, you can actually move and shift the populace. Now here's an interesting one. Look at this. So the non-SFs, the INTJs, the INTPs, the guys who don't have the S or the Fs, very small percentage of the population, only 12.5%. Now here's what you also got to understand in this, because we're talking about is being able to communicate. Within the church, that's one of the largest things, is being able to communicate. So I communicate something and I convey it to somebody else, and they have to be able to understand it. Well, what we learn with personalities is there's personality conflicts. Remember, that's in the workplace. I got this personality conflict with my boss, and we don't see head to head, eye to eye on anything. We're just banging heads all day long. That's pretty normal. But we also do that in the church, right? We also do that in politics. We also do that at school. We do it everywhere. We do it in our own homes. Well, I got friends of mine who are fighting with their mom and dad. It's like, stop hating on your mom. Love your mom. Stop hating on your dad. You know, why? Because we can't communicate, because personalities are so different. And when you start really messing these up and getting like ESTJs, and then you get some, IN, complete opposite, INFP, they're totally all on separate sides of the spectrum. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about here. That's why personalities are so important. And if you are in any of my classes, we start really talking about how to be able to communicate with one another based on understanding and really looking at how a person sees the world and how they perceive that information. And how it's not only perceived, but how they apply it to their life. Because if you can't understand how a person's applying a situation to their life, you can't help them and they can't help you. You can't walk together. You can't unite. All you're going to do is sit there and say, that person's crazy. It has nothing to do with maybe them being crazy. It has to do with them maybe completely judging or perceiving the situation completely different than you. Okay? And that's where the frustration goes away, because once we realize that we're different, we can accept the differences, we can actually get along, and we can actually begin to walk together. But just understand, this is what I want. For part 3, you have to have this part. That 87.5% of the population is dominated by S, F, or both. Okay? All right, good job. Thanks for going to that test site. Hope you get some information out of that. And God bless you. We'll talk to you in part 3.